Thank you. Hello. Honorable members of Congress, Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Raskin, and members of the Oversight Committee, I am humbled and thankful before you to show up before you today. I came to the United States from Odessa, Ukraine in 1976 when it was still the former Soviet Union. My mother and father and sister and I had left the Soviet Union, escaping anti-Semitism and persecution. While in Rome en route to Israel, my sister and I won the most important opportunity that we have ever been given. We won a U.S. green card lottery. My family came here with literally no more than shirts on our back and the hopes of rebuilding our lives in the land of freedom. I say this to you because I love this country. From shortly after my arrest on October 9, 2019 to now, I have been trying to share the irrefutable truth with you. The American people have been lied to by Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and various cohorts of individuals in government and media positions. They created falsehoods to serve their own interests, knowing it would undermine the strength of our nation. From November 2018 to October 2019, I was a key participant and a witness to numerous efforts to prove that Joe and Hunter Biden were linked to corruption in Ukraine. Rudy Giuliani, on behalf of then President Donald Trump, tasked me with a mission to travel the globe, finding dirt on the Bidens so that an array of networks could spread misinformation about them, thus securing the 2020 election for Donald J. Trump. Ironically, when I was arrested, my original indictment linked me to an individual referred to as unindicted co-conspirator 1. We now know this individual to be Congressman Pete Sessions, who sits on this very committee today. Today, I ask you to consider the following. In nearly a year traveling the world and interviewing officials in different countries, I found precisely zero evidence of the Biden's corruption in Ukraine. No credible source has ever provided proof of criminal activity, not the FBI, CIA, nor the NSA. No respectable Ukrainian official has ever said that the Bidens did anything illegal, including former President Poroshenko and former Prosecutor General Yuri Lutsenko. Even when CEO of Burisma, Mykola Zlochevsky, was offered a deal by Rudy Giuliani in exchange for information on the Bidens, he provided none, because there is none. The only information ever pushed on the Bidens in Ukraine has come from one source, and one source only: Russia and Russian agents. The impeachment proceedings that bring us here now are predicated on false information spread by the Kremlin. Everyone involved knew they were sharing lies. From Trump and Giuliani's shadow diplomacy, through my missions to Ukraine and elsewhere, to members of a BLT team, a group convened for the sole purpose of investigating and damaging the Bidens. Everything was for the ultimate benefit of Donald Trump and thereby Vladimir Putin. Because the team's investigations were centered around Biden and Ukraine, I was designated the point person in every matter they pursued. That is how I know with certainty that these Biden stories are untrue then and are untrue now. Congressman Pete Sessions, then Congressman Devin Nunes, Senator Ron Johnson, and many others understood they were pushing a false narrative. The same goes for John Solomon, Sean Hannity, and media personnel, particularly at Fox News, who used this narrative to manipulate the public ahead of the 2020 elections. Sadly, they are still doing this today as we approach the 2024 elections. We cannot separate this conspiracy from the Russian-Ukraine war because Trump has no intention to keep aiding Ukraine. Without the support of the United States and NATO, millions in Ukraine will suffer and die. If we allow Russia to defeat Ukraine, eventually that suffering will reach American shores. Today, I admit my own wrongdoings. I have been a convicted federal election campaign and fraud crimes and served my sentence. I do not hide that from reality. It is part of my truth. Despite rigorous attempts by those in power to silence me, I will be silenced no longer. Thank you to the committee for allowing me to speak. I look forward to answering any and all of your questions.
Thank you. Chair now recognizes Mr. Galanis for his opening statement.
Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Raskin, and members of the committee, my name is Jason Galanis. I was a business partner of Hunter Biden and Devon Archer, among others, during the years of 2014-2015. Our business included the acquisition of 85-year-old Wall Street firm Burnham & Company, the $1.5 billion surviving division of Drexel Burnham Lambert. Our objective was to build a diversified private equity platform, which would be anchored by globally known Wall Street brand together with a globally known political name, Biden. Our goal, that is Hunter Biden, Devon Archer, and me, was to make billions, not millions. The entire value add of Hunter Biden to our business was his family name and his access to his father, Vice President Joe Biden. In 2014, we believed that the Burnham enterprise would be significantly enhanced by forming a partnership with Harvest Fund Management, a $300 billion Chinese financial service company closely connected to the Chinese Communist Party. This effort was led by Hunter Biden's contact with Henry Zhao, the Harvest chairman. Mr. Zhao was interested in this partnership because of the game-changing value add of the Biden family, including Joe Biden, who was to be a member of the Burnham Harvest team post-vice presidency. My lawyers provided the committee a drafted email dated August 23rd, 2014, drafted for Hunter Biden that reflects this understanding. It states, and I quote, "Michael, please also remind Henry Zhao of our conversation about a board seat for a certain relation of mine. Devon and I golfed with that relation earlier this week, and we discussed this very idea. And as always, he remains very, very keen on the opportunity," end quote. I'm certain that this phrase, a certain relation of mine, refers to Vice President Biden. Devon told me about this golf course conversation shortly after it happened. Ultimately, this paragraph was deleted from the final version, with Hunter following our general rule of thumb on business deals: say it, forget it, write it, regret it. Further to that, I recall being with Hunter Biden and Devon Archer at the Peninsula Bar in New York, where Hunter took a call from his father and told him things were going well with Henry Zhao and Harvest, and that he might need a little help getting across the finish line. It was not the only time I heard Hunter speak with his father for business reasons. I was present when Hunter called his father on May 4th, 2014 on a cell phone, put it on speaker mode to have him say hello to Yelena Baturina, a Russian oligarch and an investor in Rosemont projects, and her husband, Yuri Luzkov, the former mayor of Moscow. Devon Archer was also there. Hunter said, quote, I'm here with our friends. I told you we're coming to town, and we wanted to say hello. The vice president said hello, some pleasantries, and then hope you had safe travels, and then said, quote, okay, you be good to my boy. Hunter responded by saying, everything is good, and we are moving ahead. The vice president said something about, quote, being helpful, and Hunter ended the call by saying he was going to call his father later. Before this call, Hunter sat next to Yelena Baturina at a table, and I heard him speaking on business matters generally. A few days after this May 4th party, an email my lawyer provided to this committee shows that Devon had confirmed Ms. Baturina was committed to a, quote, hard order of $10 to $20 million in a burden investment banking client. In an effort to build this financial platform, I engaged in unlawful conduct. Our companies were entrusted with $11 billion of union pension fund money, whose trust I betrayed. I pleaded guilty. I've had 8 years in federal custody to reflect on my actions. I'm profoundly sorry for committing these crimes. I deserve the lengthy sentence I received. Nevertheless, as I set out more fully in my full statement, I believe the SDNY prosecutors did not indict Hunter Biden on the same deal for political reasons, despite then available documentation that we were partners, were involved in decision-making that involved illegal self-dealing, and all of us had financially benefited from these schemes. In fact, Hunter Biden and Devon Archer's company, Rosemont Seneca Bohai, received $15 million from the tribal bonds fraudulent scheme to be invested in the Burnham Group. I've offered to supply this information to the government about Hunter Biden's crimes, but the prosecutors have been uninterested. And my request for commutation I filed in DOJ in December 2020 did provide information about Hunter's culpability. The DOJ has retaliated against me and vigorously objected to my being placed in home confinement pursuant to the CARES Act. I applied for home confinement on February 4th, 2023, and I was approved on June 9th. On June 12th, this committee issued a subpoena for Devon Archer, and the BOP reversed my approval on June 13th, with the SDNY prosecutors strongly objecting to my release. I've been appealing this reversal, and with each stage, the BOP reason for my denial has changed. During this period, the period beginning in January 2023, I was sexually assaulted by a member of the prison staff at FPC Pensacola. He persisted in sexually harassing me for many months thereafter. I had hoped to receive home confinement, which would remove me from danger. My judgment was clouded by the shame I felt for not being able to prevent the attacks. I was well aware, as inmates, all inmates are, that the Bureau of Prisons had a horrible record on these matters. I believe my disclosure would have made things worse for me. Unfortunately, the sexual harassment continued until early August, when the prison correctional officer's comments became more threatening. I feared for my safety. I decided to seek counseling from Chaplain Dixon the next day, on August 10, 2023. The chaplain was visibly upset by the events and asked to bring in Warden Salisbury, who quickly opened a PREA investigation, which is a reference to the Prison Rape Elimination Act passed by Congress. After further debriefings, I was immediately escorted to a vehicle and driven by senior staff hours to FPC Montgomery, a separate facility. I'm grateful the committee has opened up an investigation of these matters, and I appreciate Chairman Jordan and Comer and Subcommittee Chairman Biggs signing the letter. I believe I've been a victim of a pattern of retribution by the Department of Justice. I believe I'm putting myself at grave risk within the BOP for providing information on these matters concerning the President and his son. I've been treated professionally at Montgomery. I want to thank Case Manager Coordinator Anthony Barnes and Warden Randy Keys for their help in facilitating access to my attorney prior to this interview.
Thank you, Mr. Galanis, and I want to thank all the witnesses again for being here today. We will now begin the questions, and I want to remind members on both sides of the aisle, each member has 5 minutes. I'm going to adhere to that. And hit the gavel. If the question has been asked, then we'll allow the witnesses time to respond. But we are going to try to get in a lot of questions from a lot of members, and I will begin the questioning, followed by Ranking Member Raskins. Again, Mr. Bobulinski, thank you for your service to our country, your military service. Appreciate you being here. During the 118th Congress, this committee has investigated Joe Biden's involvement in his family's influence peddling schemes around the world. So let's start with that. Mr. Bobulinski, was Joe Biden involved with any of your business dealings with Hunter Biden and James Biden? Was Joe Biden involved in his family's attempts to sell their access to him? You set out a form to form a legitimate business. You set out to form a legitimate business with the Bidens. Did you come to find out that the Biden family had no interest in doing real business?
I did.
Mr. Galanis, are you aware of any times Hunter Biden used Joe Biden with Joe Biden's knowledge to benefit their business associates?
Yes.
Which business associates?
Yelena Baturina, Russian oligarch, testified about. Russian, Chinese, Chinese fund manager, Henry Zhao, and Nikolai Zlochevsky, a Ukrainian oligarch, oil and gas oligarch.
Okay. Now that we've established that Joe Biden was involved in his family's business dealings, I'd like to turn to the financial records we've subpoenaed. One major point my Democrat colleagues downplay is how much money the Bidens accumulated from foreign business ventures in such a short period of time. We have over $24 million to the Biden family and their business associates from 2014, while Joe Biden was vice president, to 2019. Mr. Bobulinski, there came a time when you were attempting to raise $10 million from the Chinese to pursue an actual business deal, a real business deal. But it wouldn't be correct to say this was a $10 million deal, would it? What did the Bidens conceive of the business with the Chinese becoming?
The Chinese were committing to deploying billions of dollars in infrastructure projects here in the United States as well as around the world.
Mr. Galanis, what was the financial goal you, Mr. Archer, and Hunter Biden set out to achieve? Was it millions of dollars or billions of dollars?
Billions of dollars.
Billions with a B.
Yes, billions.
Now I'd like to turn to some of the statements Joe Biden has made during his presidency about the findings of this investigation. Mr. Bobulinski, Joe Biden has said he never interacted with his family's business associates. Did he meet with you?
He did.
In fact, are you
He
aware that
did
Joe
multiple-
Biden also met with?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, he did
Yes, go ahead.
multiple times.
Several, okay. Are you aware that Joe Biden also met with Rob Walker, Eric Sherwin, and Devin Archer too?
I'm generally aware of it.
Mr. Galanis, as you discussed earlier regarding Yelena Baturina, the Russian oligarch, you were present for Hunter Biden calling his then Vice President father with the Russian oligarch Yelena Baturina. Present, correct?
That's correct.
You also were present for Hunter Biden's conversation with his father about a board seat on a Chinese company board. Is that correct?
I was present for a call when Chinese transactions discussed, yes.
So, Mr. Galanis, isn't it true that when Joe Biden said he didn't interact with his family's business associates, that's not true, is it?
I believe it would be misleading to the point of being an untruth.
I want to touch on the fact about the absent seat in the middle. Hunter Biden has chosen not to attend today's proceedings. I've given Mr. Biden exactly what he asked for before his deposition. It's clear that Hunter Biden knows his testimony would not withstand public scrutiny. Joe Biden has not been truthful about his participation in schemes to sell access and influence. And today's witnesses will show the American people a side of the story that the president and his allies on this side of the aisle are eager to hide. Mr. Bobulinski, can you tell us about your meeting at the Beverly Hilton with Joe Biden?
The short version or a long version?
Long version, but within a minute.
Okay. So Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, and Joe Biden were in Los Angeles for a variety of business discussions. Joe was there to speak at the Milken Conference in May of 2017. I had lunch with Hunter Biden at the Chateau Marmont, and he had asked me to meet with his father that night. He set up a meeting at the Beverly Hilton where they hold the Milken Conference, and I got there a bit early and sat with Jim Biden, Hunter Biden, and we're just talking about what we were doing with the Chinese and the legal documents I was working through. And they had sort of coached me before Joe showed up to, listen, we're going to just keep things at a very high level. We're not going to go into a lot of details in this meeting. And I just remember that discussion generally because it just struck me as odd, honestly. Joe wasn't in the White House then, and that they were sort of framing it that way. And then Joe showed up, walked through the lobby of the Beverly Hilton Hotel. I stood up to shake his hand, and we sat down and spent 45 minutes to an hour going through my background.
You met with him that long?
Yes. This wasn't a handshake,
right.
a 2-second discussion about the weather. This was a 45-minute long meeting to an hour where we talked about a lot of stuff.
Very good. Thank you. Chair now recognizes Ranking Member Raskin for his questions.
But we're actually going to go to Mr. Garcia to begin.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you again. I just want to, just for the record, be very clear that in Mr. Bobulinski's testimony, he has provided zero evidence of any sort of link between Hunter Biden and the president as far as it relates to the business dealings. And so once again, we're back to a hearing where no evidence is being provided of any sort of wrongdoing by the president. But I want to go back.
That's a
Mr.
blatant
Bobulinski,
lie.
actually, it's my time, sir. Mr. Bobulinski, I want to go back to the private deposition that we had. I was one of a handful of Democrats in that private, on the record, under oath conversation we had. And during that deposition, I asked you a question of which you gave a false answer to, and I want to go back to that. I asked you specifically who got you into the presidential debate that was attended by you and others, and that, of course, was a huge moment in that campaign, and you could not recall. In fact, you said, quote, "I do not recall who got me into the debate." Do you remember telling me that, sir?
You were playing semantics, trying to ask me as if somebody called me directly and gave me a ticket, like
Sir,
I'm going to a movie.
Sir, I asked you. I
told you
I'm
that
going to reclaim
my
my time,
lawyer
sir.
ordered
I'm going to
me.
reclaim my time. What I
Well,
said
you
was,
just ask me a question, Mr.
I'm reclaiming my time. Thank you, sir. Actually, what I asked you was, do you recall who actually got you into the presidential debate? You actually said, quote, "I do not recall who got me into the debate." You did not remember who got you into the debate between President Biden and between Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
That's
we
not a
showed-
true statement.
Sir, you quoted, "I don't recall who got me into the debate." It's on page 102 of the transcript.
You did not
Sir,
ask me
I asked
whether
you
I
that
was
question.
a guest of Mr.
Thank
Biden.
you. I'll
or a
reclaim my
guest
time.
of-
I'm not asking you a question right now. Thank you very much, sir. In fact, here, as was shown by Ranking Member Raskin, we know that you were in the debate actually sitting adjacent and next to Trump officials. When we were confronted again on this same question, Mr. Bobulinski, if you were a guest of Mr. Trump's at the debate, you responded and you quoted, once the Wall Street Journal called you out, quote, "Is the Wall Street Journal God or something? Like you act like this is some encyclopedia of fact." And you refuse to still confirm that you were a guest of Donald Trump. So I want to ask you one more time, sir. Were you a guest of Donald Trump at the presidential debate?
Mr. Garcia, those were not the questions you asked me in my transcribed interview.
Wow.
You were trying to ask
answer the question, sir. Were you a guest of Donald Trump?
Of Donald Trump at the gate or at the debate.
You were.
That was obvious to everyone in the world at that point.
Oh, it's interesting.
You were asking me semantic.
Thank you, sir. So you were a guest? That you answered the question. Because at the time you said in the transcript, under oath, I don't recall who got me to the debate. So just to be clear. So I want to keep going. So you also call yourself, you're not a political person, yet you went to a presidential debate on behalf of Donald Trump. I also want to make it clear that you made numerous claims and allegations. You've made them today, you've made them before. And yet, even though you're not a political person, this is also another photo of you. You actually chose to show up at a press conference for Donald Trump prior to the debate because you're not a political person. Did you show up to a press conference for Donald Trump before the debate?
I can't qualify whether it was for Donald Trump.
Do you know who invited you? Sir, who invited you to the debate? Donald Trump, you said. Who invited you to the press conference?
Who invited me to my lawyers coordinated things, and I showed up at a.
Well, sir, I will tell you, it was Jason Miller, who it's been very clear, it's been reported, who actually worked on the part of the Donald Trump campaign. Here you are at a Donald Trump press conference, and you can't remember how you got to the press conference. You refuse to answer how you actually got into the Donald Trump debate with Joe Biden. Do you remember speaking at the press conference?
I do very clearly.
You do. Do you know who Jason Miller is, sir?
I do know of him, yes.
Do you know that he was a Trump campaign staffer?
Mr. Garcia, you keep asking me semantical questions. You underestimate that I had 3 lawyers around me that were coordinating my travel, where I was going, and stuff
Well, sir,
like that.
interesting.
So please stop.
Well, I'll reclaim my time. Thank you very much. It's interesting, sir, because you show up to a pre-debate press conference. You show up to a presidential debate, both invited to by a person running for the presidency of the United States. You know the stakes are high, yet you have no idea how you got to the press conference. You don't remember how you got to the debate. And here you are speaking at a press conference of which the national media, so how did you get to this press
I
conference?
flew on a plane.
Who invited you?
Are we going in circles?
Sir, who invited you to the press conference?
My lawyers told me I was invited to come to Tennessee. At that point, I was trying to get the truth and the facts out to the American people. At that moment in time, if I recall, I believe 80 million people watched that debate. And that was probably the number one.
Thank you, sir. I reclaim my time. Well, with that, I think it's very clear for someone that can't remember how I got to a Donald Trump press conference or a Donald Trump debate, you're completely an uncredible witness, sir. Thank you, and I yield back.